I used to know my wife, Claire, like the back of my hand. Or at least I thought I did. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and calm the stormiest of tempers, who took pride in her work but always found time to nurture those around her. But that was before she took the trip. It was meant to be a weekend getaway with her friends, just a brief escape from the pressures of her high-stakes corporate job. Claire had been drained for months, stuck under the thumb of a demanding boss and an unrelenting schedule. Her friends, ever the planners, decided she needed a break and booked a cabin deep in the mountains. At first she hesitated, but I encouraged her to go. "You deserve it," I told her. "Let them spoil you for once." The day of the trip, I kissed her goodbye and told her to have fun. She smiled, a soft, tired smile, and climbed into the car with her friends. I watched them drive off, their laughter fading as the SUV disappeared down the road. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. Claire sent me a few texts, pictures of the cabin, a quick note about a hike they'd gone on. But by the 3rd day, her messages stopped. I figured she was just caught up in the fun, so I didn't press her. Then came the first missed call. It came at 3:47 a.m., jolting me awake. I groggily picked up my phone, but there was no voicemail, no follow-up text. I told myself she must have pocket-dialed me, but the next morning, when I tried calling her back, she didn't answer. When Claire finally returned home, she wasn't the same. She stepped out of the car with an eerie stillness, her face pale and devoid of expression. I asked her how the trip went, but she only muttered something about being tired. Her silence stretched into days. She barely spoke, barely ate. At night, I started waking up to find her standing at the window, staring into the darkness. "Claire?" I whispered one night, my voice trembling. She didn't respond. Slowly, I walked over and touched her shoulder. She turned to me, her movements deliberate, her eyes vacant. Then, without a word, she climbed back into bed. This became her nightly routine, standing at the window, then silently returning to bed. It unnerved me, but I convinced myself it was just exhaustion. That's what I told myself until the night I found her outside. It was 2 a.m. when I woke up and saw the empty space beside me. I searched the house and eventually found her standing barefoot in the backyard, her head tilted toward the sky. She was murmuring, but the sounds coming from her lips weren't words. They were guttural, alien, a language I couldn't recognize. I called her name. She stopped murmuring and turned to face me. For a split second, her eyes gleamed black, as if they were pools of ink reflecting nothing but emptiness. Then she blinked, and they were normal again. Without saying anything, she walked past me into the house. In the following days, I noticed stranger behaviors. Claire stopped going to work, but still left the house every morning, carrying her briefcase like everything was normal. When her office called to ask if she was okay, I realized she hadn't been showing up at all. "Where are you going every day?" I asked her one evening. "To work," she said flatly. "But they called me. They said you haven't been there." She didn't answer. Desperate for answers, I contacted one of her friends, Olivia, who had been on the trip with her. Olivia hesitated before speaking, her voice unusually cautious. She wasn't feeling well, Olivia admitted. She spent most of the trip in the cabin, but there was this one thing. "What thing?" I pressed. "There was this shop in town. Claire said she wanted to check it out while we were getting drinks. She came back an hour later and she was different, quieter, distant. We thought she just needed rest." "What kind of shop was it?" "I don't know." She didn't say. That night, I waited for Claire to fall asleep before searching her briefcase. Inside, I found nothing unusual, just papers, pens, and her planner. But tucked into the back pocket was a folded scrap of paper with a strange symbol drawn on it. It looked like an eye, but twisted, with jagged lines radiating outward. The next morning, I confronted her. "Where did this come from?" I asked, holding up the paper. Claire stared at it, her face expressionless. "I don't remember," she said. "Claire, I'm worried about you. You're not yourself. What happened at that shop?" Her eyes met mine, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. But it wasn't her smile. It was too wide, too sharp. "I brought something back," she whispered. "What does that mean?" "You'll see." That was 3 nights ago. Claire doesn't sleep anymore, at least not that I can tell. She just sits up in bed watching me with an intensity that chills me to my core. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear her whispering in that same guttural language. I don't know what followed her home from that trip, but I'm starting to wonder if my wife is even still in there. If anyone knows what this symbol means or has experienced anything like this, please help me. I'm running out of time.